What makes harnessing the power of AI an absolute imperative for executives? How is it different from digitalization that we've been hearing about for the last decade? And how might a device called the Rabbit change the way we do work in the future? Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Knowhow, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. As always, I'm joined by Knownwell CEO David DeWolf, Chief Strategy Officer Pete Buer, and Chief Product Officer Mohan Rao. We also have a discussion with Greg Alexander of Collective 54 about how he sees adopting AI being nothing short of a do or die scenario for professional service companies, and really all companies. But first, the news. Pete Buer joins us as always to break down some of the latest AI headlines and how they apply to your business. Hey, Pete.
Hi, Courtney. How are you?
I'm doing good. Our first story this week comes from Time, and it's titled, "Will AI Take Your Job?" Maybe not just yet, one study says. Researchers at MIT's Computer Science and AI Lab just put out a study where they evaluated if it's economically viable for companies to replace humans. What did they find? Maybe not, at least at this point. Pete, what's the takeaway here?
Well, Courtney, you know my job is to be skeptical and to pick apart headlines as much as I possibly can, so let me take a crack on this one. What's worth knowing, the facts from the article, the results that they speak to are about the impact of computer vision AI on roles, and they estimate that computer vision AI can automate tasks accounting for only 1.6% of worker wages in the U.S. And only in 1/4 of those cases can the automation be executed more cost effectively than having the human do the work in the first place. So what's not to trust in the headline and in the news? First, we're only looking at computer vision AI, right? It's not the full set of new AI capabilities available to workers by way of multimodal LLMs like ChatGPT. And second, the math gets you down to 0.4% of all wages. And if we do some lazy translation, 4% of all wages, 4% of all jobs, 165 million workers in the U.S., we are the fourth largest job market in the world. Still a lot of jobs, right? 660,000 or something like that. I think the important thing here is to recognize there are multiple forms of particularly generative AI that will be augmenting the daylights out of our work day in and day out. And at some point, at some level, automating some jobs away. And our job is to figure out as business leaders, what the impact on the business is going to be, what the timeline is going to be to get there, especially as costs inevitably drop. That's where the research in this article the outcomes will end up changing because costs will drop precipitously with time. So, advice to anyone listening, be ready to transition your talents and think hard about the implications for the mix of person and machine in your business.
And don't trust this headline at first glance.
Don't trust any headlines.
We are learning that on the show. It's a secondary outcome for our audience. So up next, I want to ask you about a device that I understand you're wanting to get your hands on. Rumor has it. Fast Company published an article recently about the Rabbit R1. That's headline, Rabbit's handheld AI device aimed to create a post-smartphone experience. Pete, what's the business angle here?
Well, so I, in fact, ordered one for myself as a Christmas gift, and I ordered it before Christmas. It has been sold out 3 times. I still have not gotten it. My hope is that I'll get it by next Christmas if I'm lucky. Good sign to the business that it's selling out, and I think it's selling out for good reason. It is a device kind of like one that we referenced in an earlier podcast. There was grandma's Iron Man brooch, that had cameras and sensors and could help you find your way, from one side of the mall to the other or whatever. This is a voice-activated, small, compact, handheld device that can, like ChatGPT answer all of your questions, or even, create output for you in the same way that doing it with your computer would do. It can perform all kinds of tasks, call you an Uber, get directions, place an order for you from Amazon, check on the status of your delivery, whatever the case might be. And the beauty is it crawls across all your apps so that you're not in on your phone, hopping from one app to another, clicking through, signing on, whatever it is that you need to do to get to the information that you need. So it's pretty slick.
Yes, I can't wait to see it. So the idea is you have both your phone and this device that you're carrying around, and hopefully it automates some of the work of you having to actually pick up your phone and do things. I do think that's probably especially helpful if you're trying to stay off social media.
I think so too. I think you end up being able to hold up a conversation and look at the landscape a little bit more than we're all currently doing right now with our noses buried in our phones.
Very cool. So Pete, from what I understand about this tool, and now that you are the almost proud owner, you probably know the answer to it. So originally when I heard about this, I was like, it kind of just sounds like Alexa in your pocket, maybe like a smarter Alexa, which I feel like I need in my life. But it sounds like you can also do some training of the rabbit, and it can do some functions. Like, for example, if you want it to execute a task in Photoshop in the app, it can do that for you. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's right. You called it a smarter Alexa. I think it is a smarter portable Alexa that's a meta device running across your current applications, and you can train it inside of those to follow routines that you yourself follow to get work done.
Very cool. I like it. Well, Pete, thank you as always.
Of course. Love it.
AI is not a yes or no proposition. Transforming your company with AI is an imperative. That makes it incumbent on you as a leader to figure out how. Those who don't get it will be left behind or overtaken by a competitor. I sat down with David DeWolf and Mohan Rao to talk about the AI transformation imperative and what you need to know. David, Mohan, welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
Hey, Courtney. Hey, David.
Hey.
Okay, David, Mohan, I got to fill in for Pete this week, and I talked to Greg Alexander about why he thinks learning how to use AI for competitive advantage is essentially, he phrases it as do or die for companies. And he especially thinks that's true for professional services. So today, I want to throw that out to both of you and get your take. Do you think it is that dire, or is it even accurate? Where do you land on that topic?
Here's the deal. I think that this breakthrough of AI is being democratized, is hitting everybody in the world so much faster than ever before, right? We obviously saw it at the onset with 100 million users for ChatGPT in 2 months. Now, we have to remember that AI has been around forever before that, but the democratization happened so quickly that I think we were all hit in the face. But I've also seen us accelerate through other phases. So, for example, if we were to rewind just 6-9 months ago, I think predominantly what we were seeing was curiosity of people that were looking to move forward but struggling to find use cases and figure out how it applied. I would argue that we accelerated through that, and we are already on the other side of beginning experimentation. It's fascinating. I've actually been noticing just in the last couple of weeks this renewed cry. We spoke a couple months ago about ROI. Well, there's this renewed cry about ROI in AI experiments. I think it's because people are actually experimenting, and that matches the anecdotes that I'm seeing. So I think when you answer this question of is it dire, is it grave, is it essential, you have to keep in mind how fast it's coming and realize that there is no doubt that those that are on the earlier wave of any technological adoption are those that are able to reap the rewards of it, and they get ahead. even if you have a few failed experiments right now, the reality is the best way to learn is to experiment and to fail. And that's going to fuel the next step and the next step and the next step. And so I do think it's critical. I think it's important. Is it grave? No, I don't think we're at the point where it is literally do or die. And if you don't do something in the next 3 months, you're going to be out of business. It will get that way. We're just not there quite yet. But remember, it's coming faster than it's ever come before.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the way I think of it is, first of all, it a little bit drives me crazy when people think of AI as one thing, right? It's many, many technologies, right? So there's generative AI, there is computer vision, there's model ops, there is cloud AI services. So it's many things, right? So, but if you just put AI in one bucket, that's a good headline. Is it dire, right? It's a good headline, but you really have to think about in business terms, right? How do you kind of prioritize this? If you take the 3 horizons framework, to me, this is horizon 2, right? So generally speaking, I'm a little broad brushing this. It's horizon 2. That means you need to be exploring and looking for new opportunities and experimenting with it. Now, Horizon 2 will come faster, to David's point, than it's traditionally come. It's not like 2 to 5 years away. Horizon 2 is going to come sooner. So from the perspective of, is it immediate now, focus on growth now? No, it's not do or die. You still need to be doing all the basics. But Horizon 2 is coming, and you got to be planning for it.
One of the things as you say that hits me, Mohan, is if we look back and just try to quantify that acceleration, right? The democratization of the internet, right? And kind of the underlying TCP/IP protocol was invented, I think, in the early 90s, 91 timeframe. It wasn't until 1995 that eBay was incorporated, and then Salesforce in 1999, right? You look at those two examples, 4 years later, 8 years later, in terms of revolutionizing and creating true disruption in terms of both B2C in the case of eBay and then B2B businesses, because it set forth brand new business models, right? You could argue that e-commerce and cloud platforms for B2B businesses is what Salesforce did, eBay and Salesforce. I think those are good analogies to look at and see. We've historically taken almost a decade for this to roll through and create the type of transformative disruption we're talking about. In this case, I don't know how quickly it's going to happen. I know it's going to be very accelerated because of the pattern that we've seen, but it's a good starting place to just think about, the internet took at least 10 years for the onset of those disruptions. It's not like we're talking a year timeline collapsing to a month timeline. We're talking about a decade collapsing down to probably, my best guess is 3 or 4 years.
Yep. I mean, if you look at 2 dates, right? Netscape, I believe Netscape browser was 1997. And then Amazon was formed, I think, in 2001. So that was a 4-year gap if you just measure those 2 points. This is going to be faster than 4 years, but it's not like tomorrow the current business model is going to disappear. So it's going to be more, we've got to be intentional about figuring out what experiments to run, what use cases to take on that we've discussed in the past, and really be kind of thinking of this as Horizon 2. That seems like the best approach to me from a business perspective.
All 3 of us have been talking to professional services companies and executives from really all different types of companies. But in this conversation, and I think some of this is just because the 3 of us are in the midst of this constantly. We are paying attention to the news, we're talking about it, we're talking to external people. We're just living in this AI world right now. But in the midst of my conversation with this executive, they said, we don't have that resource in-house. And so we know we're going to have to hire that out. And in that moment, it kind of caught me off guard because I thought, oh no, that is certainly, one way to look at it. But for a company like that, what point, I know you said, in 3 months, that's, it's not going to be an issue. But at what point do you start to really actually become concerned of, hey, if you don't get your leadership team, your executive team started on a more formal thought process of how we're going to approach AI, it really could be detrimental?
Yeah, I think of it as a cascading problem, right? Like the more you delay it now, the bigger of a hole you're digging for yourself down the road. And so is it do or die right now? No. But every day that goes by, it becomes more and more of, what would we call it? Debt that we have to pay off because we're not keeping up. And I think there's also this tendency to think of this as a very technical problem. And obviously AI is a technology. But I think some of the experiments that we can run are not problems where we need to go out and get deep expertise, right? Everybody's assuming kind of the status quo of, hey, the only way to do analytics today is I've got to have all these really smart data engineers create a data lake and help me build a modern data stack. And then I can put analytics on top of it, very technical implementations and those types of things. I think we have technology now, whether it's just simply ChatGPT. I think Grammarly is another great tool that I know the three of us love and use. That is, AI helping you to write better and more crisply, right? I think there's ways for us to go use tools and get comfortable with them in a way that allows us to learn, allows us to experiment, allows us to push them out through the organization, but doesn't require that we go become a technical expert if we're not, right? If you are a data company, a software company, have deep technical expertise, great, double down on that and make sure you're pursuing this. But if it's not your core competence, I think you're going to see more and more companies come up where you can buy products. Well, know how to buy an AI product, right? Know where the lawyers are going too far and you're too concerned and being too conservative versus not on the leading edge and adopting things, right? Start to play with the business ramifications, not just the technical expertise.
Yeah, the way that translates to me is to figuring out your use cases. Right? That's where you got to start. You got to know your own company, know your cost base. For example, if there is a particular process where it's expensive or slow or something needs to be done, that could be a good use case, and start collecting these use cases and then go through a build versus buy, right? So in there too, you have to figure out your own expertise. If the level of digitization in your company is not very high, you're not going to build it right away. There is a huge mountain to climb first in terms of being digital, but you could buy these products and many of them are coming soon. So you just had to start with where your company is and what the cost base is and where the opportunities are. And then there's also an opportunity to impact strategy, but that's a little harder if your starting point is way behind.
Mohan, David, thank you for this discussion. I hope for everybody listening, it gives you some insight into, is this do or die? Where are we at in this moment? I love, Mohan, the second horizon is where you kind of would think about as you're thinking about our progression into the technology and the disruption we've felt so far and what is to come. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Don't be scared, but get moving.
Love it.
Awesome. See ya.
If you haven't already, please go back and listen to our last episode. It's called Adding AI to Your C-Suite. And in that episode, we specifically talk about what we're doing here at KnownWell and how we're going to be helping professional services keep more of their clients. You'll definitely want to check it out. And you can also sign up for our beta waitlist at knownwell.com. Recently, I was joined by Greg Alexander to talk about how AI is standing the world of professional services on its head. He's the founder of a professional services mastermind community called Collective 54, which makes him a perfect guest for this episode. Greg, it's so great to have you on AI Knowhow today. Thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Courtney.
We always like to start by giving listeners really just a short version of your company's background, where AI fits in, and what Collective 54 is all about, and why are you vested in AI? What brings you here?
Well, so Collective 54 is the first mastermind community dedicated exclusively to the needs of boutique professional services firms. Your listeners might be familiar with mastermind communities. Others like it are Vistage and YPO and EO. We're very similar to that with three distinctions. We focus on one industry, professional services, one segment, which is the boutique, which we define as 10 to 250 billable employees, and one person within that segment, which is the founder or the co-founders, the owner of the firm. So the reason why I'm interested in AI is because I think that AI is going to result in a boom for the boutique professional services firms. I think the profit implications of AI for those that embrace it are enormous. And I'm doing my best to help our members by learning as much as I can about it and spreading the word.
And that's really interesting. We've been talking a lot on our show about the intersection of AI and professional services. And the reason for that is we, along with a lot of other people, think it's going to fundamentally change the space. And there's a lot of data that reflects that. And obviously, it sounds like you agree with that. You also had a recent blog post that kind of, I think you said this is a wake-up call or a reality check for people in professional services. And you were speaking specifically to boutique firms. But can you give us a little insight into what you shared?
Yeah. So the title of the post, which was meant to be provocative, was The AI Revolution, an Urgent Wake-Up Call for Boutique Professional Services Firms. And I present 4 kind of yes-no checklist style questions. And I do so to grab everyone's attention within the first paragraph of the post, because I do think people have their head in the sand a little bit. I think AI and machine learning in particular, large language models, it's moving much faster than people realize. And I think my members, if they're not careful, they're going to get left behind, and it could have devastating effects. So let me read the 4 yes-no checklist questions and tell you why I started with those, and then maybe that will guide us for the rest of the conversation. So the first question is, are you up to date with how AI can and will replace traditional jobs and professional services? So I remember when I came up, I would attend client meetings with the partner, and my job was to take notes so that the partner could be engaged with the client. And then at the end, I had to synthesize my notes. Well, that's not happening anymore. The partner can go in that meeting by himself and turn on a recording device on his phone. And before he gets back to his home office, the transcript has been transcribed, and the key points of the meeting has been summarized for him via a AI assistant. So why do you need the associate? The associate's going to go away. So if you're a founder of a firm and you own the firm, 85% of your cost structure is labor cost. And you just eliminated labor. So your profits have gone up exponentially. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, that's a rather draconian thing. And some people might be listening to that saying, oh my gosh, all these jobs are going to be eliminated. Fundamentally, AI is going to eliminate some jobs, but it's also going to increase the productivity of those that remain. I mean, in professional services, everything comes down to the billable hour, regardless of how you package that. Could be a retainer, could be a performance contract, you could be charging time and materials, could be a fixed bid, could be a subscription or a membership. It does come back down to the billable hour. So therefore, output per hour is what drives productivity. So imagine all of a sudden you're a 50-person firm, which would be a boutique, and you're growing at 30% a year. Well, you don't have to add 30% headcount anymore. You can get 30% productivity lift by embracing AI in the same 50 people, right? So all that drops to the bottom line. Okay, the second question is, do you understand the profit expansion opportunity that this presents you? Well, I think I just did a pretty good job of explaining that. Questions 3 and 4 are a little bit more difficult to talk about, and that is, have you started your firm on the steep AI learning curve? We've got a few hundred members in our collective, and I would tell you that, like anything else, is probably the top 20% that are down this path and are embracing it. These are the pioneers, those willing to go first and go through the, difficult, messy learning process. There's another 20% that think this is a fad. It's going to come and go, and they're hoping it just goes away. Those people are going to get run over. And then there's that middle group, that 60%, if you will. And they're taking a wait and see approach. Hopefully, those pioneers, the 20% that are embracing this, will have enough success that middle 60% will say, let's get on board with it. And then just to round out the 4 questions, the last one is, do you understand the imminent risk of ignoring AI in your industry? And, we're seeing that. For example, we have a lot of marketing agencies in Collective 54. Some of them are in the social media monitoring space. They're getting decimated. We used to pay human beings to post things on social media, and now that's all automated through artificial intelligence. So those firms are in real trouble unless they reinvent themselves. So those are the 4 questions in the article. If those that are listening to this want to read the article, go to collective54.com, and hopefully it serves as a wake-up call for you as well.
I'm curious, I know you wrote this for boutique firms. How do you think these would apply for maybe even larger professional service companies? Do you think they're the same? What is the correlation when it comes to the size of the service?
It used to be the big eat the small. Now it's the fast eat the slow.
Yeah.
So I think the big firms are in serious trouble. They would win the day because they had massive scope and massive scale. So a big global 2000 company would hire a big firm because one-stop shopping, that big firm can do a lot of things for them. That advantage of size is going away because, I mean, let's say you are a boutique and you're competing with a giant firm now. I mean, the giant firm, to justify their fee, is going to say, hey, this project's going to take 6 months and a team of 5. A boutique can say, I'm going to get that done in a month with a team of 2. How am I doing that? AI assistance. So the advantage is going to the boutique, not the big firm, in my opinion. Secondly, with ChatGPT and everything else, knowledge is becoming commodity. And therefore, general knowledge is toast. What's going to be required is hyper specialization. For example, if I'm a prospective client of a consulting firm and I go to ChatGPT for it, I issue a query. Who's showing up? Is it the big generalist firm? No, because the machine intelligence algorithm is going to ignore that because it's not as detailed or as specific. Or is that boutique firm that's hyper niched into a segment, is that firm going to be able to show up? The answer is yes. So if you are a boutique, you now no longer have to pay Google, Facebook, LinkedIn a fortune to get your ads placed and to get your search rankings up. You're showing up in ChatGPT for free. So the advantages of size, access to capital, people, scope, etc., are gone. So I think it's going to be the golden era of the boutique professional services firms.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, David, Mohan, really early in the ideation about this show was we were going to have some times where we just had some fun. And that's what I want to do today. So I wanted to have you two do a little guessing game because it is earning calls time. Okay. And already Alphabet and Microsoft have had their conference calls. And I have talked to Vegas and have set the line at how many times AI was mentioned in those conference calls, okay? So I am going to give you the line, and I want to know if you're taking the over or under. Okay, so that's the first part. And then we're also going to pick an over-under on some upcoming calls. And so we will, at a later episode, find out how well you did.
Okay.
Are you two ready? You get where we're going here. I have, again, talked to my vast contacts in Vegas and have set the line for Alphabet and Microsoft at 50 mentions of AI in their recent earnings calls. Mohan, David, are you taking the over or under?
I happen to know in 2023, there were 30,000 mentions in earnings calls as a whole. Now I have no idea how many actual, I don't know, how would I divide that by? Like how many companies is in that universe that was analyzed? But if you consider quarterly earnings calls, right, you're talking 7,500 mentions a quarter. And I would think these companies are at the leading edge. And I'm going to guess it's kind of like fundraising, right? When you go fundraise, you've got a pyramid of giving, right? And you want a couple of big donors at the top, and then you have your long tail and it goes down. And so I'm going to guess the over.
Okay.
Oh, it's definitely over. It's such an easy question.
So I didn't have to think that hard? Is that what you're saying?
You both are very smart, and you are correct. So respectively, it was 53 and 52. But here's where the fun gets a little more fun. Okay. So this week, we also have Apple, Amazon, and Facebook with their calls. And I would like for you to make your best guess at where you think they will land on how many times they mention AI in their upcoming earnings call. So Apple, Amazon, Facebook, or Meta. I'm sorry. I apologize, Facebook. Meta.
Apple is definitely an under. They don't talk in terms of technology. They talk about kind of the end usage and that type of thing, and they use other language, I think, pretty intentionally. I do think they'll mention it. I'm going to say 27 for Apple.
Ooh, okay. I like it. All right. And what is yours for Apple, Mohan? Let's do it that way.
I agree with the logic there. So I'm going to go with 18.
Oh, getting spicier by the moment. Okay. Let's go Amazon.
Amazon's going to be a little higher. Let's say 34.
Okay.
I was going to say 32. I'm going to stick with that, but we're pretty close.
All right. And last but not least, Meta.
Meta is going to be 51.
Okay.
I'm going higher than that. I'm going to go 63. I think Mark Zuckerberg plays to emotions, and I think he's a follower, and he's seen the 54. He wants to outdo the AI leaders in their AI. And so I think he's going to be intentionally over at 63.
I love it. And will there be a report card later for all of our listeners? There will be. So you can all look forward to that. All right, David, Mohan, thanks for having a little fun with me today.
That was fun.
This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you, as always, for watching and listening. If you could, we would really love it if you would take a few seconds and give us a 5-star review and review the episode. And maybe more importantly, if you would share it with another executive. At the end of every episode, we like to get one of our AI friends to give their input on what we're discussing. So, hey, ChatGPT, why do you think the AI transformation is an imperative for business leaders?
The AI transformation is crucial for business leaders, as it enables them to harness advanced data analysis and automation, leading to more informed decision-making and increased operational efficiency. Embracing AI also positions businesses at the forefront of technological innovation, ensuring they remain competitive in a rapidly evolving digital landscape.
And now you're in the know. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We'll be back next week with more headlines, roundtable discussion, and AI experts.